Hi, and welcome to our Astro Tarot for the day. You may hear some machinery in the background because I do live in a farming community after all, and people are doing some work. So you may hear that in the background. I'm not sure if you will. We have a number of cards to talk about today. The opening card that showed up is the Four of Swords upside down. The challenge that we're facing today came out as a combination of two cards. We have the Page of Cups along with the Eight of Cups. The way we're going to get through the challenge is the King of Wands. And then the ultimate outcome came in as the Six of Pentacles with some clarity of the Seven of Swords. So we have every element here being accounted for in the Astro Tarot and no major arcanas, which is kind of interesting because we've had one nearly every day that I've done a reading for months on end, which is interesting. We do have one particular card that is speaking to a zodiac sign, but we'll get into that here in a second. So this opening card of the long question being reversed, consider that fours are a number of stability. And when it's the Four of Swords, it's like having stable thoughts or something that is really anchored around a thought. And we see that this person is lying down in this kind of gray environment, three swords above them framed and one sword in the same position horizontally as their body is. So it's sitting with a question for a length of time that seems to be unmoving, like being fixated on some idea or something that we've been thinking about. But it is turned reverse. So something has been in a place of review, something that we've been holding on to and trying to gather information about is starting to be resolved in some ways because we're starting to see it from a new vantage point, a new perspective. So that's an interesting shift, right? And something that's been a long question has some kind of release done around of it. Like many years ago, I kind of let go of the idea that I was in control of the outcome of certain things, and I gave it to the wind. I in some manners of speaking, like blew the dandelion seeds into the wind, right? Because I trusted that the universe was going to bring back to me that which was going to nourish my seed. And so I gave it to God. I gave it to the sky. And when I was able to do that, big shifts happened. And consider that, you know, as much as we want to say like help is someone giving us something that we need, sometimes help is something being taken away or something shifting that we have to move from that position because we don't have any alternative to do so. For me, that was a big shift in working in the coffee industry because I had a customer that was unbearable for me to continue to enable by way of service. I could not allow myself to serve this person who was belittling me. And it inspired me to let go of my job, even though I didn't know the next step. Now, what happened and what instigated that was that I had a dream one night that I walked up to my roll top desk, which stores all of my essential oils, and it was empty. And it was empty because I had given my gifts away. I do something where I channel blends for people, and I had a hard time putting a value to it. So if somebody was in a time of need, I would just make them something. But for anyone who works with essential oils, you know that they are quite expensive. And being that I was a barista, I didn't necessarily have the income to replenish my supplies that I was giving away, and my subconscious was aware of that. It was in a lot of ways forewarning me that I was giving my gifts away. And so I sat down and I had a conversation with the sky, right? AKA God. And I asked it to help me. I asked him to help me. And I said, you know, I understand that I have this gift and that it's helped a number of people But if I continue to give it away, I won't be able to replenish my supply. So I need help with this. I need help in figuring this out. And within a week's time, I had the most horrid customer in the place that I worked. And my management of that job didn't support me by telling them that they were no longer welcome to come there. They actually enabled them to continue to threaten me by way of other employees. And so I gave my notice and I left. Now, in the time of doing that, I came across this ad in Craigslist for someone to work at an aromatherapy online store. And I was hired to work for them. And I was the first trained aromatherapist they had ever had on their staff. And within 6 months' time, I was actually helping them to rebuild their website. And I gathered so much information by working for them that I was actually disheartened by how people were using essential oils. And it encouraged me to then create a reference for myself that I could share with others. And then eventually that developed into an app on essential oils. And it basically like thrust me into this path that I had been looking at for a long time because of this unfortunate experience that I had in my job, which my being was unable to endure because I wasn't willing to continue to allow that treatment toward me to happen. And I justified it by, the fact that we weren't trained to deal with people that were so hateful, and we also weren't compensated in any way that would balance those scales out. Now that then, encouraged me to go on and get my schooling in herbalism and nutrition because I wanted to look at the foundations of health. And then I was invited to teach aromatherapy safety at the school that I went to for my herbalism studies. And so in a lot of ways, me responding to that dream and asking for help created a huge shift that dissolved that long question of how am I going to make this happen, right? And so it's interesting because people would say, that was a horrible experience. I'm so sorry that happened to you. But in actuality, I have a lot of gratitude for that lady, as unbearable as she was, because she was the fire that got me to get out of that room that was ultimately limiting my potential. And unless I had been faced with something that was that uncomfortable, I wouldn't have stepped forward into the path that I'd been called to my entire life. So it's important when we consider what help looks like that it may not show up in the way that you perceive it to show up. Now, the challenge that we had that came in today is the 8 of Cups along with the Page of Cups. So we have this emotional energy coming in today that's in a lot of ways us looking at this terrain of the heart. I often share with people that when we look out at the world, what has carved the landscape and the terrain that we transverse over and work through is that of waterways. And in a lot of ways, it does that to us internally as well. And so our challenge is to look at these experiences that we've perhaps gone through by way of our emotional realm that have perhaps pulling us outside of the world and made us to be a bit of a recluse, right? Because if we want something that's the opposite of that, we may have to come down from the mountain, because this is someone who has isolated themselves because they've discovered that, the joy and the sorrow aren't even worth the effort. So in a lot of ways, they're kind of abandoning an emotional situation. And it's quite likely that we're working with that challenge today, like that which we've resolved that we're going to let go of, which is coming up for us to have some caution and concern around. Because when we are going out in life and we see that there's this river that we have to pass and cross over, we have to consider where we can pass it with ease. And sometimes we might not be able to find that space where the river thins out, where we can just walk across it. But this is our challenge. How do we traverse this emotional terrain that we've kind of separated ourselves from? And now we have the way we're going to get through that challenge, which came in as the King of Wands. So this is the card that is in the reading that is connoting some kind of zodiac sign. And I realize it's getting pretty bright in the day, so you're seeing this shard of light around me. And I'm sorry, that's changing the lighting on my video, but hopefully it's not too distracting. Now, consider Leo as an energy is where we have the sun right now. And we have a lot of planetary transits happening in the fixed signs. But Leo, as a zodiac sign, is matters around the heart. Now, it's interesting, you know, when we look at our own emotional realm and what we've been through and what we've worked through and perhaps what we've pushed away because it's caused us some kind of pain and unnecessary suffering. That matters of the heart, like the heart is the strongest muscle in the body, right? Not only does it pump blood and nutrients through your veins, it also holds the emotional capacity and memory of everything that you've ever experienced. And I like to consider that in the chakra system, the heart as a chakra is called the anahata, which means the unstruck chord. And that's always been a beautiful riddle to me, because when we consider an instrument, it is silent unless someone comes up and plays it. And in a lot of ways, our emotional world can be silent unless we engage and unless we listen to that which calls us to engage. And so it is quite likely that something is calling you off that mountain because you feel a shift. And I encourage you to follow that, because ultimately our life and the journey of life is enriched by the experiences that we're in. Now, the ultimate outcome for the day showed up as a combination. Well, it showed up as one card, and I asked for clarity. So the card that showed up initially was this Six of Pentacles. And we see someone who's has a scale in one hand, and in the other hand, they're dispensing coins to one of two people. And it's speaking to this judiciousness around our resources and also, you know, around our body, because pentacles are related to the element of earth, which is speaking to our body. And where can we have balance in this? You know, where can we have a balance in where we put our energy and effort and where we show up? Now, consider that when you feel a calling of the heart, it can sometimes take you off balance. But this person is learning how to balance things and is having some kind of judiciousness around where they put their energy and where they put their effort. So I pulled a card of clarity for us as well, which is the Seven of Swords. And the Seven of Swords is a card about learning through experiences and also letting go of like the black and white dualistic way that we think about things, because this person is walking away from these two swords that are tying open the flaps or holding open the flaps of this tent, and they have 5 swords in their hands. And if you consider the card of the 5 of Swords, it's someone who is deciding whether or not they want to pick up something and re-engage, or if they want to let go. And so we see someone who is actually carrying all 5 swords with them as they're kind of walking away from this encampment that's behind them and this group of people that are gathered around a fire. So it lends this quality of energy of figuring out which thoughts and ideas are you going to allow to guide your experience. And I bring that up because we are in interesting times right now, right? We only had the mention of the Leo energy in our reading today, but it's actually speaking to this interesting cross that we have in the fixed signs right now, because we have Uranus and Mars up in Taurus, which is fixed earth, or passive earth. We have the Sun in Leo, which is fixed fire. We have the South Node and the Moon both over in Scorpio, which is fixed water. And then we have Saturn over in fixed air, over in Aquarius. And so fixed signs have a stability to them. And yet we have this energy of a bit of a tire iron in these spaces in the astrological realm. And so there's something that is calling us to move and calling us to shift from this place of stagnancy around what we've been fixated in the mind, and also causing us to move away from this isolating way of engaging with the world, right? This kind of hermit-esque character in our nature. And it's calling us to come out. It's calling us to leave that cave and come into the world and consider what thoughts and impressions we're going to allow to guide us as we move forward. And it's not, discounting what we've been through by any way. It's encouraging us to have some kind of caution, but to also listen to this compass that we have by way of the heart, and be creative in how we engage with others, with also keeping in mind that we have to have balance and understanding around where we've actually led ourselves away and off of our path, and how we're going to make sure that we have everything in balance so we can keep our energy and effort giving to something which we value, while also simultaneously giving it to the other people that are in our lives. So I think we are in a very big turning point. In the visual that's coming into my mind, it's like turning the last page of one chapter before we go to the next page where we are rewriting the next. So very interesting times, powerful times, and pivotal times, just by the astrological influences that are happening now. So it's important that we observe where we're getting pressed in our environment, in our lives, and also by way of authority, and what is in us that's calling us to actually put our energy and effort towards something that we truly value, that perhaps we've just had locked in a cave in our heart for some time. So a little bit longer of a reading today, but I hope the reading was useful and giving you some perspective around how some of the shifts in our lives is actually more like a storm that's calling us to new land. I send you all a good wish, and I hope you have a blessed day. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.